Happy Friday at the end of voting week. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Victoria Hulley, and I'm the Tax Technology Partner at Regan Van Roy. I joined about 3 months ago from PwC, where I was the Africa Tax Digital Transformation Lead and also the global driver for SAP and tax. It's really interesting, but time for better things here. My background is actually mostly from in-house tax. I was the group head of tax compliance and reporting for one of the big banks in South Africa forever and a day for about 18 years. So I feel like I can share from both sides of the fence, from consulting and in-house tax. And we are very lucky today to be joined by Mhairi, who also recently joined my team, and Adele, who's our special guest. And I'll let them introduce themselves. So over to you, Adele.
Thank you, Victoria. Yes, so I'm Adele Small. I am the CFO of AfricaWeather. I'm also the founder of AWS Chartered Accountant. So I have my feet in both worlds. So I see it from an auditing firm's perspective and from a CFO's perspective. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. My name is Mhairi. That is pronounced with a V, although it's spelled with an M, so you can completely disregard the spelling. I have been in the tax technology space for approximately 15 years. Previously, I was at Deloitte and before that at PwC. And I pretty much focus on the automation side of the tax function. So the building of tools, implementing, etc.
Thanks, Mhairi. So in the realm of tax technology, Excel is really not featured anywhere, and it's right at the bottom of the pile and generally what we refer to as a manual process. Of course, there's many fantastic tax tech tools out there, but that's a topic for another day. So today we are talking about Excel and where we see companies using it for tax, pros and cons, and if we are using it because it's here and it's not going anywhere, how to optimize it and how to get the best out of it. Obviously, between us, we have seen a very large number of companies, local and global, and pretty much every single one of them uses Excel somewhere in their tax process. And in fact, some of them, which I was quite surprised at initially, even like the really big top listed JSE companies, some of them use Excel only, and they run all their tax processes entirely on Excel. So it's not that it's a bad thing, it's just there are pros and cons, which we will be addressing a bit later. And I think the key thing there is that it's not just the small and medium organizations that are using Excel, it's everywhere. And it has its place, and because it's here, we want to get the most out of it. And I think that's where Mhairi will come into her own, and she can tell us a bit about where we can fill the gaps, big gaps, small gaps with Excel, and just about what the opportunities are with Excel and knowing what to look for and what can be done. So eliminating the manual side of Excel as far as possible. So I think let me just start with a question to Adele, and in your space of both CFO and in your own practice, where do you see where your experience of using Excel and how do you use it, and what do you see the benefits and negative sides of it, if I can say it that way?
Okay, so what I've seen with this is you tend to, firstly, if your Excel template is not properly done, you find yourself utilizing the same data or inputting the same data 3 or 4 times in different places because it's not all integrated. And that, of course, does not save you time. So that's a big issue that I've found, and some of them aren't integrated with your system. If I can use a practical example, you have your asset register for tax purposes and you have your asset register for accounting purposes. So you work with the same data, it's just a depreciation calc that's different. And if it's not linked, you're going to input it more than once, which is an issue. So streamlining the processes, automating it more will just go a long way. I mean, as a finance professional, you already work long hours, so you don't want to spend more time than you have to inputting manual data. And then there's a risk of errors in that manual data. So the more automated it is, the easier it is for us. I've also found that tax compliance has become a lot more onerous lately. The tax return just gets larger and larger, more fields to complete. So the requirements just get bigger, especially when you get to transfer pricing requirements and all of the detail you need to put in there. So the more we can automate it, just the better it makes our lives.
And talking about integrating with systems and getting the data in, there are ways of actually bringing data in straight into your Excel sheet from your ERP. Mhairi can do that too. So, and that was something new for me. I always had like a flat file and a copy paste. So no, don't have to do that. So it's for me a lot about knowing what can be done in Excel and opening up a whole new world of saving time, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is trying to save time so that we can focus on not the mundane recons and getting data in and out of Excel sheets. So thanks, Adele. Mhairi, if you can maybe tell us a little bit about where you see the opportunities and knowing what's possible.
So, as you mentioned, there's a lot going on in the cloud and the AI, the AI spaces, and it's all very interesting and exciting and all the rest of it, but it's also out of reach for a lot of the smaller companies. So the development costs, the licensing fees, a lot of these just make those platforms prohibitive to smaller companies. And even if they do have those platforms, the development costs for what may seem to be minor processes are often just, they can't be justified. So in that way, we still find ourselves in the Excel space. And a lot of the time as well, what I've found is, because I've built on a cloud platform before, ITR 14 tax return, it was on the cloud platform. And I still had people turning around to me and saying, can we download it into Excel so that I can work with it a bit? So Excel is a comfortable space for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's familiar, you've got it, you've worked on it for years. And that is...
And it doesn't cost 5,000 million to keep
thing.
going on it.
Some of these license costs, you're paying in euros and dollars, etc., but you already have Microsoft Office. And the nice thing about Office is that it already has an automation side to it. So Excel comes with Visual Basic for applications. So does Word and Access for that matter. So the facility is already there to be able to build a level of automation. So you may still be looking at some development costs, but there's no additional license fees or anything like that. And if your Wi-Fi goes down, and you've got a copy on your hard drive, you can carry on working. So, there's definitely still a space for Excel in our environments.
And I think, sorry to interrupt, but something that you said there really stood out for me, and it's about using what you have already. So it's not always about, okay, what tax tech is out there and what's going to be best for us. I think the first thing is to look at what do you have already and how do we optimize that? How do we maximize what you have before going out to look at, then something might be a good fit, but first look at what you have already. What can Excel do? What can we do with Microsoft Power Apps, Microsoft Power Automate? Use the things that you have already, building out workflows and process basically around Excel, because we're all familiar and happy with Excel, like you said, Mhairi, before needing to go out and invest in something that might be much more expensive.
Victoria, if I can just comment there quickly, what I've also found is some of these programs aren't catered to your country. So, for example, SA-based tax law, you need to adjust it. You need to sometimes do a hack to get it to work for the specific country's tax law.
Definitely. And I think specifically for us in South Africa, there's very little that I'm going to use the word off the shelf, specifically around income tax compliance. VAT is a bit more straightforward because it's more standardized globally. But when it comes to income tax, there's very, very little that is available off the shelf. And the things that have been around, regrettably, I've seen 2 of the big names that are moving out of South Africa. And even those were quite tricky from a customization perspective. They're very much geared towards either the US and or Europe. So again, another reason why I think a lot of our local companies are using Excel for tax compliance. And there are some really good tax packs that have been built by, custom built for organizations and or available through other vendors. So, as much as we say Excel isn't the best way to go from a tech perspective, it actually might be a good fit, and not to be dismissed initially. Yeah. Thanks. Mhairi, I don't know if you would like to, I feel like I'm chomping to know what else, what can we do, what's possible. If you can maybe give us some examples, show us some things, talk about typical trouble spots that people have, things that people do repeatedly that they don't need to. Give some examples of those kind of things, I think would be great. And Adele, if you have anything that you want to add in or questions, please keep it as a conversation.
Yeah, so I've got a small demo that I've set up just to, take the people in attendance through some of the sort of basic functionality that we can build in. What's important to keep in mind as well, though, is that basically anything that Excel can do, we can automate. The only thing we cannot build is human judgment. So if a process comes with a judgment call, like you have to go and look at the invoice and the description in there and say, okay, well, this is what it says, etc. Therefore, it's a deductible item or a non-deductible item or whatever the case is. That we can't, well, we can't easily build something like that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's definitely not an easy task. What we can build quite easily are things where there is an existing rule set. So you have your process, whether it's for VAT, for your ITR 14, whatever it is. That process, as long as it's got a rule set, and it can have as many branches off the rule set as you want. If this happens, then do that. If the other thing happens, then do this. And if something else happens, then do that. As long as there's a rule set, we can build that automation into Excel. There will always be a certain level of human intervention that's required with these processes. Somebody has to go in and run the data and look at, okay, well, there was an adjustment that should have been captured here and that needs to be put in. Somebody still needs to go in and cast their eye over it. And the point of automation is not to take people's jobs away from them. What I've seen happening is that people who are incredibly talented, motivated individuals are spending days and weeks of their time simply gathering data, cleaning it up, consolidating it, and then they end up with 2 days of the month left to actually look at the reports and to analyze the data. And what we want to try and achieve with some Excel automation is to actually give these talented professionals the time to do a proper analysis of the data, to be able to pick up any outliers, any errors, etc. Because when you're doing everything in a rush on the last day of the month, things are going to get missed. And if you've got a tool that can take all of the, for lack of a better phrase, grunt work away from you, do the data cleanups, do the importing, do the consolidating, you are then left with the task of being able to look at a clean set of data and perform your analysis the way you should be able to do it without rushing, etc.
Mhairi,
yeah.
I would like to add to that. So I completely agree. I know there's been a lot of articles out there that states that technology is going to take away accounting jobs, but I see it differently. I see it as an opportunity for us to add more value. because the more time you have to analyze the data, the more informed decisions you can make.
Yeah, that really is what the goal is. You know, it's not to put people out of work. It's not to say, oh, you can be replaced with a machine, because that simply isn't the case. What we are trying to do is give people a bit of a better work-life balance, you know, take away those having to work on the weekends, having to work until 11, 12 o'clock at night because everything's due on the 1st of the month. Try and get that process under control with adding automation as an assistant, not as a replacement. So,
Mhairi, sorry, I just want to jump in because what you said there is something that resonated with me, because so often I get asked, can you help me do a business case for why we need to implement ABC to help us with our tax process, whether it's compliance or reporting, whatever it might be. And you know, the business case is really important to be able to get the buy-in from everybody and move forward with the automation process and the digitization journey of a company. And generally, it's always focused on the rands and cents. Well, how much is it going to save me? And it's all about efficiency for sure, and giving the time back. And then there's what's the value of that time? And it's all about the money side of it, and quite rightly. But a really big thing that you've just said now is about the time and late nights and weekends. Something that never actually makes it into the business case is that work-life balance and mental health. Like, who wants to be sitting doing your numbers ad hoc, like forever and ever, when actually that stuff should be done automatically? And as you were saying, Adele, then to be able to focus on the stuff that is more engaging, is more exciting, and actually is a better use of our brain power. So I think that is it's a really important thing, and not to be overlooked. Just that job satisfaction, mental health, and work-life balance. So yeah, I mean, just thanks for raising that, because it's something that pretty much goes, you know, unspoken. Yeah.
No, it's something I hear about a lot, you know, especially when it comes to year end and all that sort of thing. The time that these poor teams have to spend. It just, you know, I feel for them when it gets to that time of the year, or a specific submission that needs to be done at a certain time. And I really, really feel for these folks. And, you know, we talk about the tax return, the VAT 201, you know, and we've got these standard templates that we can create or customize for specific business requirements. But another thing to note is we can also come in and speak to you about your current processes. And it may be something that you do that nobody else does, because it is specific to your business, specific to what you need to do within your space. And we can do a bespoke automation that just fits your process. It won't be a standard build that we might just tweak and customize, etc. We can actually build something just for you, just to fit your processes. And an example of this was a client I had a couple of years ago. They actually outsourced their data consolidation, okay? And they would get all of these files back from their outsourced company. And they would then need to take that and put all of these 10, 12 files, extract the data that they needed to put it into their VAT 201. And what we did was we actually built something just for them that talked to the format that they got back from their outsourced company and just populated their VAT 201. And that was it. We took 2 weeks of work from the woman who was doing it at the time. It would take her 2 weeks to go and extract all this data and do her progressive totals, etc., her quarterlies and all of that sort of thing, her validations, etc. And we just automated all of that, and it was just for that client. This wasn't a tool that we could pick up and go and sell to someone else, because it was built so specifically for this particular company.
Mhairi, can I ask, you said it took her 2 weeks. What did it go down to?
All in all, assuming she had all the files that she needed, the whole process took about 5 minutes.
Wow.
I'm going to show you a small example of what we actually did in that.
That'll be great.
in that scenario as well. Yeah, but that's really that's the goal. And the nice thing is you can build in your validations. So you're not lying awake at night going, oh, did I remember to check this? Did I remember to check that? We can build in all of these validations. We can build in data checks. Is the data complete? Is my trial balance balancing to zero? You know, we can build all of these things. And so you're not sitting wondering, is the data that I've got out of the system, is the data that I've imported, is it complete? Is it good? You know, are there any errors in it? Did it bring through any strange characters? Was there a corruption at the time of download? We can build all of those checks in. And as you said in the beginning, Victoria, there are a lot of companies who are primarily running a lot of their processes on Excel. And unfortunately, in many cases, far more cases than I would like to think about, these files have been set up by people who were well-intentioned, but not necessarily terribly skilled in the setup of an Excel document. So you end up with external file links, which can lead to corruptions. And if you've got a link to an external file and that file hasn't been updated, your current file is going to be incorrect. So the setup of these files, of these Excel automations, it really should be planned and executed correctly, and protections put in place, validations put in place to make sure that when, you know, if incorrect data is put in or a file link has accidentally been created, that it can be picked up and resolved.
I'm laughing because that's exactly what happened to me. In my old world, I'd have an Excel sheet that went on for like 300 columns, not that much, but so say like 100 columns, and that linked to 5 or 6 or 7 or even 10 other external files. And somebody in their wisdom would go and delete a row and a file like 3 down, and all of a sudden everything would be ref. I'd be like, and now you're looking for a needle in a haystack, trying to find what on earth happened. So it's that kind of thing. Yeah, I see Adele, you nodding. Like that kind of thing.
What I also found with inheriting files, someone would build this really fancy Excel template, and then the next person would try to take it over and have no idea where to start with the sheet because it's too complicated. It's not user-friendly. So that is also an issue when someone leaves and you inherit that Excel template.
Yeah, so that's something that I try and build into pretty much all of my developments, is a certain level of protection. So people can't go in and just change a formula or hard code a value into a formula. That's my personal pet hate, is someone will decide that an adjustment needs to be made and just go and add on R1 million. You know, they'll take the formula and then plus R1 million at the end of the formula. And next month they're going to use the same file, and suddenly we can't understand why we're R1 million out. So, you know, all of my developments, I protect all of them against, you know, well, as applicable, against formula editing, taking out rows and columns. You know, we can protect against deleting sheets, renaming sheets, pretty much anything. You know, you've got a whole suite of protection items that you can put into your Excel developments. So that's something that's really important to consider, you know, when you're setting up an Excel sheet. But another thing that I also do, and Adele, this comes back to what you were saying about legacy issues, is that every development I do also comes with full documentation. So if you look at a specific sheet and you're like, well, I don't know what the sheet does, I can see that it's calculating things, but where's my input data coming from? What are the calculations doing, etc.? All of that is something that I fully document, and it's in the file. It's not sitting in a Word document somewhere that you can't find it on some random network. It actually sits inside the file. So you will always be able to access that documentation and see, okay, right, I need to bring this data in from SAP, and this data comes in from somewhere else, and this is something that's done by the finance department, so I need to get that from them. And that is an incredibly important thing to have, especially when it comes to, you know, passing on these tools to other people that are going to be working with them. All right. Okay, let me show you all one or two things that could possibly make everyone's lives a little easier. Let's go in here. Okay. All right. I'm going to assume everyone can see my screen. So I've set up a special tab on the ribbon just for today. It's called Demo Tools. Now, all of the functionality that is in here has been written in Excel VBA. So VBA is the application that is actually part of Excel. It's not something special and new that you have to go and buy. And it's there, you know, it's what you use to record your macros. For those of you who may be familiar with working with macros, etc., that all happens in the VBA component. So over here in the Developer tab, you've got Visual Basic. So it is part of your existing Excel setup. So I created a new ribbon tab and I've added a bunch of buttons to it. And some of these are things that might make your day-to-day life a bit easier. Every time I go into Excel, this demo tools will be visible to me. I don't have to have a specific file open. It is just always going to be sitting on my ribbon. Now, if you look at the first part of this ribbon tab, you'll see that you've got title case, uppercase, lowercase, etc. Now, these are things that we can easily find in Word. So if I go into Word, you can see I've got all of this stuff here, my sentence case, lowercase, uppercase. But in Excel, I don't have that. I've got my increase and decrease size, but I don't have a facility to change my case. Now, you can do it using formulas, but what I've done is I've actually put it into the code and I've added that code to a button. So I can now go and I've got my trial balance excerpt in cell B1 selected, and I can change it to title case, uppercase, lowercase, sentence case. Okay, so it's a very basic little thing, but it is such a pain in Excel if you're not familiar with the formulas to change case and you discover you've had caps lock on the whole time while you've been typing, and now you have to go and try and change it, you know, copy it, put it into Word, change it, take it back, etc. So having something like this on your ribbon could be incredibly useful. Another thing that often happens, and a lot of the next items that I'm going to show you quite frequently come through when you've got exported data. So data that's come out of a system, you know, maybe somebody put a bunch of spaces in there or the system generated some spaces, whatever the case is, but you quite frequently get data coming out, especially text data that's got additional spaces in it. So I've put in a facility here to trim the spaces. And what that does is it removes extra spaces, but will still leave the spaces between words. So if you look at goods purchased, I've still got my space between there, but all the extra spaces have been taken out. And that's why it's different from removing spaces from numbers. So the first section here in the ribbon was for text, the second section all relates to numbers. So if I look at the value that I've got in cell E6, there's a space in my numbers. And again, this is something that can happen when you copy and paste from, I don't know, perhaps Word into Excel, or if you copy something from a web page, and it can even come from your exported data. So you can select all of the data that's got spaces and simply remove spaces. Then this is something that definitely happens frequently with exported data, is that values come out as text. So if I look at this over here, we've got numbers stored as text. So this little yellow triangle that appears. So again, convert text to number. So I can select my whole column of numbers and just convert text to number, and everything that is currently reflecting as a text value will change into a number. In cell F5, I've got a number where the minus sign is appearing on the incorrect side of the number. So it's got 4,000 and then it's got the minus. So we can correct the minus sign there. In cell F7, I've got a decimal point as my thousandth separator, and a comma as my decimal separator. So again, sometimes it may come out of an export file like this. We can change that using the comma point. Now I've got my debit and my credit columns. So I actually just want one column. I don't want separate debits and credits. I want one total amount. So I'm going to change this number to negative, and I'm going to make this one column. Take that away. Okay. And now I've got my current month and my prior month. Percentage variance is 17%. That just goes and it puts in a formula, and there's all sorts of ifs and ors which goes and checks for, you know, if the number is greater than 0 or if it's blank, etc. So the length of the formula is not indicative of its complexity. It's just making sure that all the information it needs is in there.
Barry,
But yes.
quick question. If you had a scenario where every month you're importing data from SAP and you know that every month it's going to come with, I don't know, a debit and a credit column, and it's going to have spaces and it's going to have commas and that are dots and should be, you know, a comma, or those kind of things. Can you write one macro that would run all of the things that you've just showed? Because you know that every week or every month you're going to have to go step by step by step by step, and instead of clicking each button on your ribbon, you could have one button that runs all of those macros.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, absolutely. So I will show you an example of that shortly, where we go in and we clean up the format of some data. Just before I move on, I just wanted to go through the third group on the ribbon, which is a comment functionality. Now, we all know that you can, in Excel, you can go and you can add a new comment. That's fine. We're not taking it away from you. All right. You can still go in and add your comment. What this is useful for is where you are collaborating with other people, all right, or where you send them a file that's got 50 sheets in it and you say, I've made my comments, you know, and this poor person now has to sit and go through 50 sheets of data looking for that purple triangle in the top right-hand corner of the cell to see where your comment is. All right. What this section here does is in any file, it will go and add a comment sheet. It will allow you to add a comment, reply to a comment, edit a comment, and it saves all of those on one consolidated comment sheet. So the minute you open up a file, you can just go to the comment sheet and you can click on a comment and it will take you directly to that cell. So I'm going to show you how that works now. So I'm going to add a comment. And you'll notice before I click on OK, there's currently no comment sheet in this file. Created a comment sheet, it's built the table, and it's put my comment that I've just added into the comment sheet with the value of the cell, the sheet name that the comment is sitting on, who the author was, the current status of the comment is open, and I can navigate directly to that comment by clicking on View Comment, and it takes me back. So I can send this file to someone now, and they can go in, they can view my comment very quickly, they can reply to it, and I can view the comments, and in the same cell as the original comment will be the reply. Okay, so it's not going to separate out all of the comments that are made except new comments. A reply to an existing comment will be in the same cell as the original comment. So I can go back there and I can add another comment. And go to comment sheet, and you can see I've now got 2. And the other nice thing is you can also close a comment. So you can let people know this has been resolved and no further intervention of the file. No further intervention is needed. So this comment now shows as a status of closed. It's got the closing author and the closing comment. And we can build in other, columns as applicable. So for instance, this functionality I've also included in the tax pack that I'm building. So in that instance, it would also include the division of the pack, the year of the pack being completed, and if there was other information, we could build that in as well. So, yeah.
It's just interesting because generally one of the negatives, if I can say, of Excel is there's no workflow, and it's really difficult from an audit trail perspective to see who's doing what and to be able to review easily and have the comments and see who's replied, who's done what. I mean, and it's not fantastic compared to some of the tax tech that's out there, but like we were saying, Excel has its place, and if you're going to use it, this is really useful. I would find this really useful.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can filter and only view the open comments, and if you really want to, and what's also actually important to note is that editing a comment and removing a comment are both features that can be password protected. So if you don't want anybody to just be able to go in and willy-nilly start editing and deleting comments, you can put password protection onto those. And then that is a password that, for instance, only a super user would have. So we could provide a super user password to somebody nominated by the client, and for any features that we want to have protected, we can then add password protection onto any of these buttons. So if I go back to this comment now, I can remove it and it will delete it from the comments list. So, and that's why this is generally one of the ones that's password protected. Because you don't want just anybody to be able to go in and start deleting comments, and you may want to keep those comments, as you say, for audit trail purposes. And just before I move on, this is not something that you might find yourself using every day, but let's say you've gone and you've put this whole long comment into a cell and whatnot, and you're like, oh, hang on, I just typed this essay into the wrong cell. You can actually move a comment. So if I want to move current month to prior month, I can do that. And my comment now sits in the prior month cell. So that's just a cute little feature that I included just for the sake of it. All right. So we were talking about cleaning up data and these repetitive processes that you find yourself doing every month. You get data out of the system and you've got to go and fix the number format, and there's blank rows and there's blank columns. And, there's spaces in front of the descriptions, etc. So what I've done and this this next button, this will actually only work with this particular format that I've set up here. So something that is your process or whatever would obviously be, customized according to what you needed it to do. But for the sake of demos, what I've told this button to do is go in, remove blank rows, remove blank columns. So clean up. All right, and that just takes everything out, puts it into a nice, neater format. And let's say this data is now in the format that it needs to be. I just want to make it look a little bit prettier. I can click on format. And whatever I've decided to do with it, whether it's some conditional formatting on the values, whether it's just the sake of changing the heading color and font like I've done now, anything like that can be programmed into a button.
So, Mhairi, I found that very useful because every system that you export from exports differently. So it looks different depending on which system you export from. And then you can have built the best template, but as soon as you need to copy and paste it, you still need to do manual work to make it fit into the correct formatting.
Yeah, and so often a lot of these exports are incredibly ugly. I mean, they don't come out looking very pretty at all. It's just like, meh. So, if this is something that is being sent to someone for review or whatever, it's always nice to bold your headings, make it just a little bit more presentable. And it may be a minor thing, but quite often someone will sit and spend 5 or 10 minutes, just formatting things, changing the number format, putting it into currency or accounting format, etc. And that's 5 or 10 minutes that you could be having a cup of coffee. So, you know, I'm all for automating where we can. All right, moving on to the next little part of the demo. So oftentimes, especially where data has been manually captured, and perhaps these manual captures have been done by a team of different people and everybody had their own way of doing it. So you'll end up with ID numbers, for instance, that may not have the correct number of digits. All right, so we all know that an ID number should be 13 digits long. Somebody might have had a finger fumble and now you're sitting with 12 digits or 15 digits or whatever the case is. Somebody else might have thought that it's, you know, because the ID number is now ending up in the scientific number format, that correct that putting ID in front of the ID number might work best. So you might end up with a lot of data which is technically correct, but which actually isn't helping you right now. So what I've done here is put in a facility to go in and clean up the ID numbers. So what this function does is it removes any alpha characters and it will only leave the numeric characters, and it will validate and make sure that everything is 13 characters long. There's a conditional formatting on this. This particular ID number is missing its last character, which is why it's showing up in red. The only reason why it looks the same length is because a 13-digit number format has been applied, okay? But if I actually look at the ID number over here, I can see there is no 0 at the beginning of the ID number. If I go in and add the missing 2 or 3 or whatever the case is to the end of the ID number, the conditional formatting will disappear because the ID number now reads as correct.
Mhairi, I needed this when I was doing learnerships. The number of schedules I got with like crazy ID numbers, and oh yeah, no, that would have been really useful for me.
Yeah, and Victoria, when you're doing an audit and you need to audit the staff members, and those ID numbers are exported from the client's system, and it looks crazy.
Yeah. In fact, I've just done a thing for FATCA CRS reporting, and obviously one of the things is looking at taxpayer ID numbers or TINs and from all different countries, and it's actually such a mission to try and understand what's valid and what's not. But if you've got a rule, you could set a rule that anything that's Ghana must have two alpha characters and 5 digits, let's say, and just run this. Like would have also saved a lot of time. So there's a lot of places you can apply this.
That's actually a perfect example of where you can build in a rule set, because in that particular data, there was a column with the country code. So we could say if the country code is GH, I think it is for Ghana, then the format of the number should be 6 characters long, and it should begin with GH or whatever the ID number format is. But, you know, it doesn't only have to look at the ID number. It can be looking at another column as well to actually get the correct format for that particular country's ID number. So there's a whole rule set that could be built in.
I think the point is when you know what can be done in Excel, it's okay, so it can do this, where can I use it? And you know what your processes are, you know the things that take your time, that don't need to, and it's just thinking, okay, Excel can do this, where am I going to use it? And then just plug it in. Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's why it's so important to speak to the people who are actually doing the work, you know, to sit down with the person who is capturing the data, who's consolidating the reports, and say, where are your speed bumps? You know, what is slowing you down? Where is the bottleneck? What is taking the time? You know, obviously, if you're relying on somebody else to send you data, there's not much Excel can do for you about that. But if it's a case of I'm getting data from a system, but it's a mess, and I spend 3 days cleaning it up, that we can fix.
Yeah.
Just one last thing on this sheet. Actually, a function, it already exists on your data sheet here under text to columns, but I've set this one up specifically to work with, because you can separate according to commas, semicolons, tabs, etc. I set this one up to separate according to a space. So I'm going to separate the name and the surname, because this is another thing that often happens. You get a column of names and surnames, but you need to maybe organize alphabetically by surname. So you need to be able to separate that data out as well. And one thing that we were discussing yesterday, Victoria, was a lot of the cloud platforms give you the facility to be able to attach a file, you know, like your PDF or whatever the case is, into the actual file. And you can do that in Excel as well. I can go and I can attach a file, and there it is. It appears as an icon. I can change the picture that's on it if I want to, but I can just double click on that icon and it will open up the associated file. And it actually embeds the file into this Excel document. So I can email this to someone else, and it doesn't matter that they don't have this Jan 24 file on their computer. It's part of this Excel document now. It's not linking to an external source. So that's just another feature that we can also look at. So I was talking about the bespoke solution that I did for another client a couple of years back, where we were actually bringing in data from different sources. And the trick was that, because you can automate, you can say in Excel, go to this folder, pick up the file that's called January and go and paste it into this sheet. But what if that file isn't called January this time? Or what if somebody decided to call it Jan? All right. So this is actually a nice little feature where you can click on it. You can go and select all the files that you need to bring into your current Excel file. And what it will do is it will show you the file name that you've selected and ask you which sheet you want to put it on. I can send March to import 3. You'll see at the bottom here, I've got imports 1, 2, and 3. Map this item. January can go to import 1, map this item. And February can go to import 2 and map this item. And the nice thing is this is not creating file links. All of this data is pasted in as values, bringing in no links to the external file whatsoever. So there are no data links. There's no workbook links in here. So there I've got my January, February, and March data that's all been brought in, and it's all sitting in the correct place. Okay, so that's what I have prepared from just a demo point of view on general functionality. I see we've got 10 minutes left. Victoria, do you want me to give a brief preview of the current build that we're doing for the ITR 14?
Yeah, I think that'll be, it'll be nice to see. Adele, and is there something else particular that you would like to chat about or ask?
No, Victoria, I'm fine. I just see this enabling a lot of people to work with lots of data. So you get volumes of data and it will help you import it correctly, take out the manual intervention, and just save you a lot of time.
Yeah. And the thing is, this whole cleanup process that we had over here, you could actually make it part of your import process. So you could just sort of tack it on. So once it brings the data in, it can immediately clean it up. So these things don't all have to be separate. I've separated them out for the sake of the demo, but we can have all of these number functions, removing spaces, correcting the sign, the comma point, cleaning up the data, formatting the data, all sitting in this one button for importing the file. So all of those different processes can be brought together into a single process. Okay, so my disclaimer before I open up the current ITR 14 build is that I am mid-build. Okay, so this is by no means a completed product.
I think it's just nice to show, it's like anyone can do it really. Well, I say that I'm not Mhairi, I wouldn't be able to do it, but the point is what's possible on Excel if you've got the right skill, and be able to learn.
Okay, this will be very quick. Like I say, this is mid-build, by no means anywhere close to being complete. I've only got a handful of schedules in place, etc. But what I have done is I've brought in the mapping and the importing functionality. So from completing your ITR 14 point of view, it's actually quite a seamless process to be able to bring in your data, have your mapping in place, be able to see, which schedules you need to go and look at, etc. Before I do anything though, I need to do there is nothing up my sleeve thing. So this is the current income statement. You can see there is no data in here. My balance sheet, there's no data. Okay, so there is nothing up my sleeve. All right, I've got my trial balance sheet here, which is currently empty, and my mapping sheet, which is also empty. Okay, so I'm going to import the trial balance.
Like a real magician.
Yeah, nothing up my sleeve.
The rabbit in the hat.
All right, so this is just a little message. It's been set up to tell you that in this particular file, the format of the trial balance is account number, description, and value. So it just brings in those 3 columns. That's all that it needs. It can be customized to bring in your trial balance in any format that it's coming out of the system in. So, but the trial balance I'm bringing in is very basic. It's just a demo trial balance. And there is my demo TB. Trial balance has been imported, and there it is. Okay. So now,
I just wanted to interrupt. So that was from an Excel file, but you can write a script to bring the data out of, I don't know, SAP or Oracle or whatever the Sage, whatever the system is. So it doesn't have to be an Excel file.
No, it frequently is. It depends on the SAP and Oracle setups, because generally what you'll find with those ERPs is they will have put an add-in into your Excel, which will allow you to refresh any references to the system. If that hasn't been done, then you may have to do an export, but it generally is part of the ERP implementation that they will give you a feature in Excel that will allow you to bring data in or to refresh links to the system data. Okay, so when you do your mapping for the first time, your ITR 14 mapping, you will generally, in any new system, just need to do it for the first year. Okay, thereafter it will only be new accounts that you'll need to map. So I have a mapping that I've already prepared, and this would be you bringing in the mapping that you did for your ITR 14 last year. I'm going to import my prior year mapping. And that's my prior year mapping brought in. And I can now just click on map accounts. It's telling me that there is one unmapped account. I'm not going to map it right now. I'm just going to click on done. And you can see computer expenses is a new account that's currently unmapped. So all of my other mappings have come through from the prior year mapping. One new account has been added, which I need to map. I can go and map that account, and I will send computer expenses to my expense items and put it under other expenses and map this item. Done. Oh, just for information, you can select as many unmapped accounts as you want. So if you've got 10 accounts in here that all need to go to other expenses, you select all 10 of them and send them to other expenses. This is not a one-by-one situation. Okay, so my computer expenses is now mapped, and I can go back and look at my income statement, which now has some data in it, and my balance sheet, which is balancing. Okay.
Awesome.
Incidentally, I don't know why I'm scrolling around, because I have a navigation toolbar here, which allows me to navigate to my income statement. And something else that's quite nice on here is if you're working between sheets and you're going back and forth between, let's say, your tax comp and your learnerships, for instance, you can go back one sheet or you can go back 2 sheets. And it will just navigate you back to the sheet that you were on before your current sheet or the sheet that you were on before that. So that's also quite a nice thing.
Nice.
The rest of these are just for jumping around within the pack. I've already taken you through the comments functionality. There's just one last thing I'm going to show you, and then we can wrap up, and that is the schedule listing. So every schedule that we build into the tax pack has a validation facility in it. Sometimes there's a validation in there. In some cases, no validation is necessary, and the table will remain blank. So for instance, income statement does not currently have a validation, but balance sheet does. So my balance sheet has passed validation. There is no validation necessary for the income statement, and I can go to other expenses and I can see why my validation has failed. And I can look over here and other expenses versus the income statement. So I've mapped 229,000 and some change as other expenses. I now need to describe that at a schedule level. So if I go and I'm just going to cheat here a bit. As soon as I've described that 229,000, my other expenses schedule will validate. And I can go back to my schedules list and I can see that other expenses is now in green. Okay,
Cool.
so
Thank you.
that is all I am showing on the pack for today. I still have to build the rest.
Thank you. Thanks, Mhairi. I think, yeah, just a whirlwind of what can and can't be done in Excel, pros and cons. And I think, I mean, the main message is, sure, there's a lot of really good tax tech out there, but it can be expensive, and you can use Excel in conjunction with those as well. But at the end of the day, we've all got Excel and it ain't going anywhere. So let's try and make the most of it, get the best out of it that we can. It definitely has its own advantages as well. So yeah, guys, if you've got any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Any questions, any feedback, any comments would be really welcome. And thanks so much again for joining us and giving up an hour of your busy days to listen to us in our little conversation. Adele, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have you with us. I don't know if you've got any closing comments for us.
No, thanks, Victoria. It was great to be part of the conversation, and I look forward to utilizing the tools in Excel.
Thank you. Thanks, Mhairi.
Welcome. Just final note from me. A lot of people know Excel as it's just a really big calculator, and it is, but it is incredibly powerful. And if you can think of a way to simplify your life, I strongly suggest that you make it happen, because it will make your processes and your time management so much better. There really is nothing more painful than the repetitive processes that you know can be automated. So yeah. I strongly encourage everyone out there, if you have some processes that you think you might be able to automate, yeah, please feel free to drop us a line.
Just one last thing I wanted to mention, that we do have a really quick snapshot assessment, give you a quick view of where you are at in your tax transformation journey, which gives you a couple of ideas for how you could move up from one level to the next. And that's on our website with a click on the link to Tax Tech Assessment, if you want to just have a quick look, see where you're at. Cool. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great weekend.